evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monadnock School Board meeting of this evening. Sorry for the delay while we pulled ourselves together. First thing on the agenda is public comments, and aside from the group that we intend to hear from, do we have anyone else who signed up?
Tom Matson.
Okay. Tom, would you speak with us first? Thank you.
Hi, Tom Matson, Town of Troy, member of the District Budget Committee. How y'all doing? I'm here to speak about the formula change proposal. I know many of you weren't on the board last time this went around. I think Winston's the only one. And Lisa, and you. Okay, so you remember what happened and the clusterfuck it caused and the change in taxes in the town of Troy. I want to remind the board that we went to court over this, that there is a contract between the district and the towns. And before we even start to explore changing a formula by common vote, we need to look at the contract, which calls for a 50-50 split. Now, if the board decides to go forward and propose something different other than that, it's a breach of contract. Okay, the only reason why we didn't prevail in court 5 years ago was because the selectmen weren't able to act fast enough on it. And I'm assured this time around that the selectmen will be acting fast enough on it. So there's a contract in place between all the towns in the district, and it calls for a 50-50 split. Whether or not that's the fairest split, that's what the contract calls for. Okay, so the second thing is the timing of all this. You have, forget the date that the last petition warrant articles due in, but
February 20-something.
February 25th, okay? So between now and February 25th, you should be having a number of warrant articles calling for various different changes in the formula. It would behoove the board not to act until after all those warrant articles have been submitted, and take the time between now and then to give the towns what they're looking for. Before anyone can make a good decision on the split, we need to know what's your plans for the future. Are you going to close Troy School? Are you going to close Gilscombe School? What are the budgetary effects on that? For the next 5 years, are you going to keep both schools open? Because that's the way the people have to decide. We have to look at the money. We have to look at the revenue and the expenses before we make a decision. If you decide that the best way to go is other than the 50-50, then we have to rewrite the contract. Okay? There's a legal basis to what I'm saying. You have a contract in place. The other thing is you have a moral obligation to those towns that were negatively impacted by the illegal switch to a 75-25 to make them whole. Are you just going to say, well, contract's good 1 year and not the other year? And how is the handling of these contracts, how does that affect your other negotiations? If the school board just willy-nilly breaks a contract between the towns, does that inspire confidence in their future negotiations with the teachers and the rest? Okay, so you have more than just more than just the tax percentage on the table here. Okay, there's a lot of different ways to go about this. I'm hoping the school board goes and takes a good look at projecting what we're going to look like at the end of those 5 years. How many schools are we going to have? How many less students? We're dropping students like flies here. We're locked into a default budget that you don't need, not when you're dropping 50 kids in a year.
Tom, can I steal a minute of your time to ask you one question?
I thought I had the floor. After I'm done, you
Not a
can.
no. Okay.
I'm done.
All right. Do you remember the year that this contract?
1961, February 11th.
61, so before 61.
They are, you know, I would hope that this board goes back and reviews that whole court case at least look at the contract that you're operating under. As a board member, you should know that by heart.
Would you care to forward that to us? I know we have it around the district, but if you have it handy.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I honestly don't.
Okay.
I was just looking for it. I got all the Supreme Court
Me
cases
too.
and
I was just
everything
looking
else.
for it. I know we've got it, but.
But, the other thing is, it's already becoming a divisive issue. One of the selectmen in Fitzwilliam posted on Facebook that everyone has to turn out and vote for the 75-25 to save their tax dollars, okay? I'm not going to let it stand, just stuff sliding by this time, okay? The member, if you don't come to the towns as a group and try to work it out, you're just going to end up pitting one town after another again, okay? So please, take the time between now and February to let us know, where do we stand? Are we going to have Troy School? If I'm going to have Troy School, if I'm not going to have Troy School, I certainly don't want to pay capital expenses on other town schools, and vice versa. There's a lot of different feelings out there. But we need to know, are the schools going to be open, and what it's going to look like in 5 years before we decide on this? And do you want to break a contract? You really should have the lawyer look at the contract and give his opinion. I think he's going to be of the same mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have any other public comments?
Yep, Mr. Bailey.
You, Mr. Bailey? Mr. Bailey, sorry.
Good evening. Alan Bailey from Troy. First, I agree with everything that Tom just said. But you do have the option of renegotiating the contract. And if you do, I'd like you to consider something. Instead of going to 50-50, flip it, go to 25-75. In New Hampshire, we fund every level of government, including the schools, through property taxes. Well, we pretend that we do. We don't really do that, though, because with this funding formula, in Troy, 58% of our tax bill is based on the school district. 3/4 of that, I didn't figure it out, probably around 40%. 40% of our tax bill is based on student enrollment. So instead of being based on the value of the property in town, it's based on the number of children that we have in town. That's called a head tax. And that's not right, and that's not what we should be doing. In a perfect world, I'd like to see it go to 100 and 0, 100% based on property valuation and 0% on student enrollment. I think that would be the fairest way throughout the district. Some people would be affected negatively, others would make out better. I know that's not going to happen. But if you do decide to renegotiate this contract, please consider flipping that over from 75-25 to 25-75. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Did we have someone else sign up?
Yes, Mr. Batchelder? Doug Batchelder?
Hi, could you please
Hello,
state your
ma'am.
name
I'm
and your town?
Douglas Batchelder. I'm a taxpayer in Troy, New Hampshire. I'm here with my mother, who is also a taxpayer in Troy and is a resident. And I have a master's degree in educational leadership and administration, did 35 years of school leadership. I'm familiar with budgets and the challenges that you all face in terms of a school board. I appreciate the time that you spend away from your families to be part of a deliberation like this. I echo the two gentlemen who just spoke, inasmuch as when the public decides it's necessary to educate its students, it shares the responsibility for that as a public. It is disparate treatment and discriminatory to say one part of the public must bear a disproportional amount of the burden for the benefit the entire public derives from education. Otherwise, you end up having a group of people sitting under the shade of a tree they neither planted nor funded, but want its shade. The correct funding model is the model Mr. Bailey spoke of,
can't talk now.
where the entire public shares the responsibility for the education of its children. In entering into the contract, and I grew up in Keene, in entering into the contract back in the 60s that established the district, you are essentially becoming a functional municipality in many respects. You are deciding together you would do something relative to the education of the children in the area that you serve. It makes no sense to say, this group over here who lives in this place because they have the most students should bear the brunt of the responsibility for the education of it, any more than it would be sensible to say Ward 3 in Keene, because they have the most number of children, ought to pay more property taxes for the funding of the schools in Keene than those in Ward 1 or 2. Exactly that situation is being applied in the present funding model. It is unfair, it is disparate impact, and worse, it's only making your future more economically difficult. Because as property taxes rise in a town like Troy and others that have a larger student population and therefore a larger burden for the education funding, it drives property values down, the ratables decline, and the property taxes increase as a consequence, only making a death spiral economically. We are better together, and the future is brighter together when we share the responsibility together in an equitable manner. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Batchel. Laura, do we have anyone else signed up?
No one else.
All right. Well, then I think we would love to hear from the Dude Be Nice folks. Thank you guys so much for coming. If you're going to present here, I think we'll move out of the way so we can have a look.
Hi, my name is Zach Morrell. I'm a senior here at Monadnock, and Dude Be Nice is my senior project, and my mentor is Matthew Caron. The mission statement that we have for the Dude Be Nice group is that the purpose of the Dude Be Nice project is to bring both our community and school closer together by building relationships, spreading awareness, and overall just doing nice things for other people. What's the purpose of this? In recent years especially, there's been a lot of bullying in our school. There's been a lot of people bringing it forward to the school, and a lot more people just talking about it in general that I've noticed personally, and other parents and my own parents as well have also known that. So this was a way that we could kind of focus on the bullying part necessarily. Yeah. And then I had talked to Ms. Spencer starting last year about our school culture, and that was a big thing right now with, there's been some teachers, fighting, things like this in the past couple years, and with the bullying in the student body, that we thought that we needed a change in school culture, and that overall we just needed to be nicer to each other. One of the goals is to involve students more in the community, like in trying to do fundraisers through businesses and things like that. And we also want the community to be more involved in the school. So when we do recognitions for Dude Be Nice, every pep rally, we have a student that's voted based off the student body's votes, a staff member that's voted in, and a community member. So that involves the community into Monadnock as well. And what have we done so far? About a month ago now, I gave an anti-bullying speech to the school. I gave it to both the high school and the middle school, and I have a video of it later on in the PowerPoint. We did our Q1 pep rally already, and we did not recognize a community member in the first pep rally because we just wanted to get the school to kind of understand what it was about, so we just did a student and a staff member. And we did it for both middle school and high school. And we've also done a poster contest up to this point where we had people make posters with just nice messages about Dude Be Nice and our school in general. And we posted that in a survey and had people vote on that. And the winner will get a prize. Spreading awareness is a big thing where we just want to spread awareness about both the anti-bullying prospect of it, but also we just want people to be nice. Like, that's just basically as simple as that. So far we've had about 60 high school students join and about 40 middle school students join, as well as some of the staff that also backs this. We are starting to sell t-shirts and stickers to promote and raise money for our campaign. And here's a video of my speech to the high school.
He's going to be speaking to us about kindness. He's going to be speaking to us about the importance of kindness, not only to ourselves, but the importance of kindness and how we treat each other. He'll be speaking to us about the issue of why we must improve our culture here at Monadnock, and how each one of us can do our part to make it better. As always, please be respectful listeners. I'm going to ask that your cell phones get turned on to silent or off. And without further ado, please give a very warm Monadnock welcome to our very own senior, Mr. Zach Moran.
People think of a certain stigma whenever the word bullying is said. People think of the average boy being a big scared boy that all the other kids cower to. The big boy that takes your lunch money and ruins the everyday lives of the so-called outcasts. But that is certainly not the case anymore. Bullies come in all shapes and sizes, and there's no specific gender for boys. Not only do boys come in different forms, but so do the targets of boys. It's not just the so-called outcasts that get bullied. Most kids today have experienced bullying at some point throughout their lives. This shows that this is a growing problem in schools, not only across America, but across the globe. If you don't believe me or haven't realized the issue is growing, then here are some statistics. Over 3.2 million students admit that they are bullied in America each year. 160,000 teens skip school every day because of bullying. 71% of students report bullying as a problem at their school. 1 in 10 students drop out of school because of repeated bullying. On this day, I would also like to take a moment to remember not only a great student and a great kid, but my brother, John. On May 29th last year, my brother passed away, and that is why I would like to talk about him a little bit today. Although he was such a wonderful kid, there was some darkness to his story. Unknown to most, John had many bullies and was bullied frequently throughout his school career. He was bullied for many different reasons. People would make fun of him for his haircuts, clothing, preference of music, medical issues, hiding, even his patriotism, and glancing onto the Marines. To me, this makes no sense at all. Why would anyone want to target someone over something that they believe in and love? Although there were many things that pushed him through his own, bullying was a major part of it. Kids do not realize how much they can impact people, even when it seems like you may just be joking around with someone. It may really hurt their feelings, which can lead to other problems as well. As someone very intelligent once told me, whenever I talk to anyone, I try to think that they're going through the worst time of their life, and that I need to watch what I say to them, because no one truly knows what everyone's going through in their lives. She also said, imagine the worst day of your life. Now imagine someone picks on you for something that you like. Maybe it's the clothes you're wearing, or your favorite band. How would that make you feel? So watching what you say is a great way to start helping the bullying epidemic go away. There are many things that are said every day that can not only hurt others' feelings, but also ruin their whole days, if not weeks. Two of these things that are said much too frequently are the phrases, I'm just going to kill myself, and you should go kill yourself. Not only is the topic of suicide not funny or anything to joke about, there are many people in their everyday lives that have been directly affected by suicide. Personally, every time I hear jokes like these, it ruins my entire day, and sometimes that bad day can lead to an entire bad week, simply because one joke can lead to so many bad memories. Another way that everyone can help put an end to this bullying epidemic is by talking to peers about bullying and finding an adult to resolve the issue, as well as stopping bullying whenever you see it. If there's anything that I want people to take home with them today, it's to not only remember John and his struggles, but to understand what he now stands for. He stands for all of the kids that are bullied on an everyday basis that need our help today. Understand that everyone in this very room can make a difference in so many people's lives, With how frequently this happens, it's not a matter of if you can help, but instead a matter of when you will help. Thank you for your time.
Later on, I gave the speech to the middle school as well. And there's some pictures of me doing it to the middle school, where are we going from here? The goal is to increase Husky pride around the school, hopefully, especially at the pep rallies. We want more people to stay and things like that just to see who won. We want to have more guest speakers come in and talk about bullying, as well as hopefully eventually possibly getting the actual Dude Be Nice program in here as well. We just want to raise awareness about bullying, and we would like to get more activities during school about anti-bullying and raising awareness about our project, as well as doing more fundraising. That's it.
Thank you so much, Zach. And Mr. Karen, thank you too. Yeah. Great job. Does anyone from the board any questions? Will you pass this down? No one has any questions? Yeah.
So you gave the speech at the high school and middle school. Are you going to, or some of the other people in your group going to look at maybe extending it to the elementary schools?
We did talk about that, and I think we might have to redirect the speech a little bit, because I know, especially most of the middle schoolers didn't even know my little brother, because he's only a year younger than me. So I might have to redirect the speech a little bit to be able to give it to the elementary school, and maybe take out, like the suicide parts and stuff like that, just focus on the anti-bullying. But we did talk about doing that at the elementary schools as well.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions? This is just an amazing project that you guys are doing. I really appreciate it. And this in conjunction with celebrating what's right. It feels really good right now. Eric?
Somebody in the back.
Yeah, if you... Zach, before you answer, could you repeat the question the way you understood it so we all know?
I think what I got from that is like, how does this impact the teachers into creating a different school culture with the students and the teacher-student relationship?
And what sort of resources do they have now so that they can build a dialogue in their classrooms? Is that right? Okay.
So, I mean, for some things, like, we're trying to do activities every week for the most part, starting soon, that can focus on, we just want to focus on a lot of different things that have to do with mental health, things like that. Like, so when we do activities every week during our win block, which is when we all get together and we don't we can go to teachers to get work done and things like that, but we also have activities that we can do, like every Monday. And so we're trying to do activities like that. So that's kind of the place where the teachers can kind of get with their own students more and be able to build those relationships through the activities that we're giving them, hopefully.
Okay. But how is the culture leading the teachers?
I can answer part of that. So some of the big things are our new administration has reinforced a lot about the policies, and again, when it comes to professional responsibilities in terms of that. Our wellness group in the high school is currently looking into we're getting a Monadnock Center for Violence Prevention to come in. They're going to be doing some training for our students, but our staff's also going to be involved out too. And then there's also the mental health first aid training that we're working on getting to try to make available to our staff, and how to recognize those things and how to better address it with our students. So, yes, there is a bigger plan. There's a lot of different things, the resources we're looking into right now to seeing what we can make available for our staff members.
As well as the students?
Yes.
Is this for the school board or for that conversation there?
I can take one more question if there's one more question. No? All right. I just want to say that, I'm sorry, Eric, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Zach, is there anything that we can do to help you? Sounds good.
And I was going to echo that, actually. If you need the support of the board on anything, don't hesitate to ask. It never hurts to ask, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. All right, that brings us to the action part of the meeting. We do need to look at policy DBJ. We've got that in front of us for second read. We could pull that up. And I'll be looking for a motion on that policy.
So the motion from the policy committee is to accept the update to policy DBJ, wherein the value permitted for the business office to transfer budget line items will increase from $1,500 to $3,500.
I would second that.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this motion? In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Moving along. We did say in our last meeting that we were going to entertain a motion on the funding formula. So if we have a board member who's prepared such a motion, now would be the time to bring that motion.
Yep, I have a motion prepared. I've handed out to the board. I apologize, I don't have enough copies for those in the audience. But the motion is to create a warrant article that shall read, to see if the Monadnock Regional School District will vote to change the apportionment formula from the current apportionment of operational costs from 25% based on equalized property value and 75% based on average daily membership to become a formula of 50% based on a 3-year average of equalized property value and 50% based on a 3-year average of daily membership as of July 1st, 2018, with no change being made to the present formula for apportioning capital expenses. So this is not a motion to change the formula. It's a motion to create the warrant article, which would bring it forward to deliberative session and ultimately to the vote of the polls.
So if I have another board member who's in agreement that we want to have discussion on this topic, I would need a second, and then we'll move into Scott's rationale. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
So the rationale I've printed out here for the board members is that first, the apportionment was last updated in 2013, and per RSA, we can only adjust it every 5 years, which is why we're discussing it now. So we're at that 5-year milestone. For a variety of reasons and a variety of discussions, the general consensus, I think, is that 50-50 has always been the fairer distribution of costs. And so I know there's a lot more we could say about that. Maybe that's part of our heartfelt discussion tonight. And the slight difference from where it was 50-50 in the past to now, this formula would be 50% based on 3-year averages, is that it creates more of a gradual approach so that from one year to the next, we're not just jockeying taxes up and down, town to town. We're creating something that looks back over 3 years so that whether taxes are going up or taxes are going down, depending on the town, depending on the population, depending on the property values, there's an equalized averaging which creates more of a gentle impact to each town as the transitions happen. And below that, I've printed out the table, which is actually a copy from Jane's presentation from some weeks back, that shows you by town the current ADM and property value distribution, what a 50-50 split would look like based on current year numbers, and then what that change impact would be by town.
Okay. And based on conversations that we've had over the past couple of meetings, I think we're all in agreement, and speak up if I'm wrong, that we don't want to jump right into voting on a motion like this. We do want to start our discussion this evening. We want to do a little research, see exactly what the impact is going to be. But I welcome us to start the discussion this evening. My feeling is hopefully we won't actually vote on this motion. We'll end with a motion to table, and then we'll talk about it some more in our next meeting and perhaps the one after that. Yes?
Did you pass that by the DRA about this averaging idea? Department of Revenue Administration, excuse me?
This averaging is something that is being done in the town of, is it Gorham? Yeah.
It's actually being done in several different towns, so, and I just wanted to be clear that the numbers don't represent any averaging of 3 years. This is strictly based on last year's numbers if the formula were different.
The answer is yes or no?
This is a formula that is approved for use in other municipalities.
You did not passed this piece of document, passed the DRA.
I did not create this document.
Thank you. Do you think before the next meeting that could be done?
It could be passed by our legal counsel for certain, and they're very well versed in what the DRA's requirements are for warrant articles of this type. So would that be sufficient?
If you want me to call them, I'll call them. Anybody can call the DRA and ask them.
Okay.
Yeah. Looking at this, and I know how the taxpayers in Fitzwilliam have been saturated like everybody, and I do think the problem lies at the state and only property tax owners of this. But anybody to look at this, and I know from personal experience in my own family, people are struggling now. And when I look at another $700,000, and yet it looks like only 2 towns here are going to benefit from this 50-50. I in no way think that this board or any committee has done a whole lot of work on the formula and what would be fair. I don't know what paying per student. I know on the finance, Karen had brought to our attention there's 23 different ways that you can fund this school district. But if it keeps pushing like this, you're just splitting the towns. It is nowhere fair. And we've already lost 2 towns, and it will split it, and the ones that are remaining will have to pay more. And for one town to keep coming back and saying, you know, we need less taxes, we all need less taxes. If I was to have my way, I'd like to see all the property owners withhold any state portion until our Senate and all our representatives up there in Concord start doing something to lessen the burden on the property tax owner.
Thank you, Phyllis, and thank you
You're
for being
welcome.
respectful. Anyone else? Nick?
Nobody else wants to speak, I will. I took a quick look. Well, most of us, this isn't like a giant secret. Like, this was propped up. You know, obviously this is coming. You know, but people kind of mask it and kind of have slipped it in a little bit over the past few weeks. But so I started doing a little looking around as well. I was involved in my town when we did the formula change previously 5 years ago. And when you look at the 2014 Census Bureau American Community Survey for median household incomes in our towns, there's really only a difference of $4,000 or $5,000, with the exception of Gilsum, who's down in the 40s. Everybody else is 55 to 60,000. Okay, this is the money that's in people's pockets. We were at a point at the 50-50 funding ratio where we had towns that were paying $20,000 a year, $20,000 a year, and other towns are paying $5,000 or $6,000 a year per student. Now, you can say we shouldn't do it by head count. There's been a lot of discussion of towns splitting off. Even Swansea's discussed splitting off. We've talked about having towns fund their own elementary schools. A lot of different ways in funding that we've discussed up here. If you go out on your own, it's by head count. It isn't by some general sense of community. If a town is really upset with the way things are and they go off on their own, it's by head count. You're going to pay by the head. And with towns paying $5,000 or $6,000 a year, that isn't really economical for those towns to do that. With towns paying $20,000 a year, there's more of a case. And that's why we've seen a couple of the other towns that were spending extraordinary sums of money per student make those decisions, because they have people that are suffering in their towns as well. Okay, it isn't just one town that suffers. And this whole thing spurs the infighting between the towns of whether or not to invest in the capital or equity in the other towns. I saw that with the last voting where we tried to get some improvements to some Swansea schools, and it was shot down. my town has traditionally been in favor of those improvements. But so moving forward, I would like to see some discussion that's rooted in reality as far as what towns have for options moving forward, because that's what the town selectmen are going to be looking at. And this is one way of doing it, is to change the apportionment. But we also have to look at what the towns are going to be expending per student. And going back to 50-50, you're going to have some towns that are spending almost 4 times per student than other towns. That's very concerning to me. It's very concerning to the selectmen and the people in our towns. Thank you.
Do I have any other questions from the board? Any other discussion? Karen?
I was wondering if somebody could give me some more background on the contract. And if we could have the contract available at the next meeting.
Okay.
The other question I had is, if this was to be put on the ballot and it was voted no by the voters, does that mean we stay with the current portion, or the current system for 5 years?
Yes.
Or, so if this is voted no, the current system would be for 5 years?
Correct. Well, no, not for 5 years, because we could still put another warrant article on the ballot. The following year.
So if this is voted yes, then it would change to 50-50 for 5 years. But if it's voted no, we would be having this discussion again next year likely.
That's right. That's my understanding, and if I'm wrong, I'm sure somebody will correct me. You're correct. Winston?
I'm on the impression that some of these things can't be done by the board. It has to be done by petition.
So
the board can recommend what is put on the board, on the warrant, one way or the other, but I don't think the board itself should write that.
So I've had this conversation with our council, and they certainly will weigh in on that when we run this by them between now and next meeting.
I'd like him to research the laws for that, changing the formula. It certainly must be close by, because we just did it 5 years ago. See what you can and cannot do, because this is going to divide the district if it's not handled right.
I have 3 homework items so far to run this by the council, to have the contract ready for the next meeting, to specifically ask the council, can the board create this warrant article, or does it need to come by petition? Karen?
Could you also ask if there's a way to word this so that if it was, I would prefer to see, if we had something go through, it would be held for 5 years. So if this was voted no, the current system would be for 5 years. Just so that we're not doing this every year, was my thought.
I'll ask the council. Anyone else? Who do I have?
If you accepted that homework, why aren't you accepting getting the DRA?
It's on here.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So I want to say that Nick's right, that this was coming. There's sort of no mystery that we needed to get this out there. And I made the motion with a little hesitation, but I know that we have to get the discussion going, so I wanted to get a motion on the floor. We can always revise a motion, revise recommended wording of a warrant article. I do believe that the current formula is wrong, especially for my constituents in Troy, and we've suffered for a while, so I'm coming from that place. But I don't know that 50-50 is the right mix, or that this is even the right model, okay, to the point of some of you. What I struggle with is, in order to take this apart and really get it right, in the sense that we all feel really good about the model, we need the work of a financial analyst, which is not our legal counsel. It's not any of us, and it's not the business office. I believe we need someone with an understanding of the different models that are available to us, and some pretty strong Excel skills, and the ability to take it apart and put it back together. And they have to have the raw data. They have to understand the property values of the last X number of years by town, maybe down to the by household, in order to take that apart and really put together the right kind of thinking for us. Now, I don't know how we get access to that kind of a resource, and if it's even worth us paying for a consultant to help us with that. If we said yes to that, do we have the time to do it? So I'm saying all that to spark some discussion around how do we take this apart instead of just keep discussing it every 2 weeks, because that's not going to go well.
We can see if we can start to gather that information, and if the board feels it's worthwhile to go in that direction, then certainly there can be a motion to expend those funds for financial analysts. Yes, sir.
It's possible that the Keene State Economic Department might take it on for you, for nothing.
Okay.
Remember 10 years ago, they did the model for the middle school?
Nick?
Yeah, our administration had done a lot of work for us. I think it was the last meeting, providing this document on apportionments. One of the things that we had went over is that there are strict ways in which we can fund the school. So you can't say, well, Joe in this district, earns this much, we're going to charge him this and charge him that. It's based on property evaluation and student head count. And so it's really a sliding scale. I mean, you can move a scrubber to determine where you want to put those. So I'm not sure that it's something that the board needs to spend additional money on doing.
We will get a copy of the RSA for the next meeting, and Nick is correct. It does say there are two components that have to be the primary drivers for the formula. Scott?
So I'd like to respond to that and just clarify why I don't think it's the responsibility of the business office to do this work. It's because it's not a couple hours of Jane in front of Excel. This is a couple of bright people for probably many days on end, taking apart those 23 options and identifying where's the sweet spot for our taxpayers. And I would not want to ask the business office to stop their daily operations to spend all that kind of time on it. That's where I'm coming from. I don't mean to say they're not skilled. It's that they have a day job, and we keep asking for more and more information like they're our personal business analyst, and that's not the role of the business office.
Okay. So once again, I'll read the homework, and if someone feels like with this homework, it's time to table the motion until next meeting when I come back with this, then we will do so. So run this by council and the DRA, bring the contract to the next meeting, ask whether it is okay for the board to create this warrant. Can a no stand for 5 years? How much would a financial analyst cost, and do we have the time? Also explore whether Keene State Economics might be able to help us out, and also to bring a copy of the RSA to the next meeting.
You got some influence there.
All right, so I think that'll give us enough information to continue our conversation in the next meeting. So if I could have a motion to table for now, that would be helpful.
Second.
All right.
I'd like the school district to contact the selectmen's offices to advise them that this committee is being formed, or whatever we're going to call it, the warrant article, to see if they want any input on this, to get it to us ASAP. We already have input from Troy. We need it from all the towns, the selectmen, to look at this so that they have people that can analyze too.
Okay. So is that okay with the person who made the motion to table, Betty? Yeah, so we'll add that to the list. Is it discussion on the motion to table?
Yes.
Okay.
And I just wanted to be very clear as we approach these outside agencies and we talk with the public, that this isn't a motion that the school board itself is putting forward. It's a motion by an individual town, possibly a couple other school board members. So this isn't something that's already a vetted motion that we're putting forward. This is something that we're looking to get, some board members are looking to get information on.
This is a motion that's before the full school board right now.
That's correct.
It's not a motion to change the formula, it's a motion to create a warrant article, which would effectively change the formula.
Yes, but it isn't the entire school board that's pushing this forward. Thank you.
We haven't voted.
Yeah, we haven't voted on that, so all I can say is the facts, which is it's a motion that's on the table. It's something that the board is discussing right now.
Thank you.
I can say who made the motion and who seconded it, but I can't say who supports and does not support at this time.
Thank you.
All right, so all in favor of tabling?
Aye.
All right, opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you all. Moving along. Student representative report.
Okay. So, first of all, juniors had their PSATs last week. So I'm going to actually turn that over to my other friend here to talk about it.
As a junior, I can say on the whole, we got a really good vibe. Juniors seem to be pretty prepared for it. No overall complaints. I think it was just a long testing day. So yeah, overall it went very well.
I know we'll be having a French National Honor Society meeting coming up, and that'll be for like the seniors to receive their cords and things, and to hopefully elect officials for that. And we've also been, students have been receiving emails through this Celebrating What's Right in Monadnock, which seems to be pretty positive. You know, there's been a lot of positivity that's come out of it. People are receiving very good emails from each other, and it really has created kind of a good atmosphere. So.
You each got one, right?
Yes, and
that feel good?
but you know, and it kind of shows who has each other, and you know.
See, we know that because we got the list of who got
really?
the emails. Yeah.
So that's kind of what's been going on.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much. Is that all?
That is all.
All right. Superintendent's report.
You should have in front of you a legal-sized sheet of paper that is this year's certified boy report, certified yesterday.
Boy stands for beginning of year.
Beginning of year data. It's the beginning of year count as of October 1st, actually October 2nd, since the 1st was a Sunday this year. And this year, the total count is up 1 student over last year. We're at 1670 this year. And you can see the breakout by each school on your sheet.
So we're not dropping like 50 or 100 students a year.
I think it was last year. I'd have to go back and look. I think I had done some research on birth rates and looked at other trends, and I predicted we were going to flatten out a little bit. So I didn't think we'd flatten out this much so quickly, but I think we had a real uptick. If you look at the middle high school in 9th grade, we had a lot of kiddos coming in from outside, you know, or private schools coming into 9th grade. So we had a little bit of a bubble coming in there, so that accounted for some of it.
But it looks like we're losing a big class of seniors. We also have a big class of the younger kiddos coming in, right?
Yep. Yep. So that's your boy report for this year. Next, I just wanted to give a quick synopsis of where we are with the budget process. Jane and I have met with all of the administrators, and we've kind of compiled everything into, you know, a starting point for the budget discussions, and we've had some conversations about where we see common themes or trends with what folks are seeing as needs. Overall, right now, we're still working on finalizing things, and we were hoping to have the guaranteed maximum insurance rate today, because that will, you know, trick the budget one way, you know, either higher or lower. But as of right now, what did we use for GMR 5% on the budget? We're coming in a few $100,000 under this year's budget. So we're in a good place there. You know, so we're anticipating budget books will be prepared by next Friday. So you'll have that to look at, and then at the joint session on the 4th, we'll walk through how we got to that initial number, and then, you know, we'll go from there. We're also waiting for information on apportionments from the DRA. We expect to have those hopefully this week as well. So that will also, you know, impact our anticipated revenues and, you know, that type of thing. The other piece I did want to mention about
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. When the information about apportionments comes back, it also tells us the equalized valuation percentage for each town. Mm-hmm. Would this be the first time we would see the percentage for EV?
I already have had it.
Okay. And do you know whether it changed significantly for any of the towns?
It does.
Can you bring that to the next meeting?
I can. I would rather
Unless
wait.
you have it now. We'd love to see it now.
Well, I think waiting
it's in
until
the hands of the DOE and the DRA right now,
All
until
right.
they say okay.
Right. All right.
We haven't gotten the certified numbers yet, so as in keeping with other types of data, I try to wait until we have the firm something in writing before we go off and running. At the last budget committee meeting, there was a request that we prepare a a supposal, if that word has come up a lot lately, if we were to have a budget amount of $30,500,000. So I just wanted the school board to be aware that that request has been made. Seeing as we're at the point where we actually haven't even come up with what our starting point is, we're not prepared to do anything with that yet, but we will be working towards that. And I would expect that at the joint meeting on the 4th, we'll be able to share some insight into what that might look like. So that'll be I think it'll be a good opportunity for everyone to hear the information at the same time. The other thing I did want to mention, you all received an email from me last week. Was it last week or was it? I forget. Regarding our grant funds for Cutler and Mount Caesar. So I did receive a phone call from the Department of Education the other day, and Kathy is her name, said, so I was calling to see if you would still be interested in having funding to run your after-school programs at Cutler and Mount Caesar. I said, can you just repeat how you said that, because that didn't compute. And they informed me that they had received some additional federal funding, and that in the hierarchy of eligible applicants, we were next on the list. So I don't know that it was quite the full amount that we had requested in the original grant application, but it's pretty close. And so the team, the ACES team, currently being led by Jody Peters, will be the interim director since Darlene has left. Has been working with Jeremy pretty closely to try to, get everything up and ready to run as soon as the state releases those funds to us. So that's good news for our after-school programs.
So on that, if the grant funds are coming into the district, it relieves the general budget from having to expend some of those funds, right?
And what it does is it also enables us, for example, we had written into the grant application that Cutler would have a program at Cutler, and so that will be put in place. We have to follow the terms of the grant application that we submitted, so there may be some savings coming out of operating budget, but because we reconfigured things to save money, that actual cost savings, I'm not sure what that where the tipping point is. And then also with, it impacts Troy as well. So I believe reopening the program back at Troy is also, again, same thing, we had to combine. So there will be some cost savings because of the grant, but we'll be expending additional funds because we condensed to save. So that's the kind of stuff we're working on to get those bugs out.
We applied for a grant for the town of Troy, and I think you said that the grant money for 2 other towns, it was Cutler and Mount Caesar.
I think I misspoke, it was Cutler and Troy.
It was Troy.
All 3.
Mount Caesar and Troy.
Thank you.
All 3. Thank you.
I misspoke.
What is the length of time that they'll be funding?
I'm waiting for confirmation. I'm not sure if we've received it yet. The grant applications and the typical term of the grant is 5 years. And the funds typically reduce by a certain percentage after the first year and second year and so forth. So haven't received anything in writing yet from the Department of Education regarding whether this was 1 year only, but I tend to think not, because that wasn't what the original grant was for. And would have had to have gone through another bid and application process to change the terms, so.
All right. Thank you. Anything else? Are we going to need any non-public?
We will need a very quick non-public under C. And that is all.
All right. Business Administrators Report?
Don't have too much, as I stated just a few moments ago. All of our paperwork is in. We are just waiting for the Department of Revenue to basically, they'll reach out to the towns before they reach out to me with the tax rate. I typically will get copied on it, so I'm in wait mode, waiting to see what the tax rates are. They'll be coming forth. I've gone onto the portal. They're not on there yet. I kind of watch because I like to make sure we're one of the first ones if we can. Other than that, as Lisa said, we're moving forward with the budget process. I hope to have all books ready by Friday afternoon.
Next Friday.
Yes, next Friday. Thank you. And I wanted to say afternoon because I know Neil likes to come try and have coffee with me while I'm trying to put them together. But I'm
I don't go to class on Friday anymore, so that's okay.
So I'm hoping by Friday afternoon we'll have the office staff help me put those all together. And I think that's about it.
All right. And what is the next major benchmark in our budgeting process?
The next benchmark would be the handing out of the books, followed by the morning session on the 4th of November.
4th of November. Thank you. And you'll bring the tax rates to the next meeting with you too?
Yes. If I have them. Like I said, the towns will hear before I do, actually.
Okay. For my report, I just want to let you all know that some of the folks from the district, it was, let's see, Neil from IT, Lisa, myself, and Kathy from special education all attended the Bradley Kidder Law Conference on the 10th of October, I'm sorry, on the 4th of October. It was put on by the New Hampshire School Boards Association. And they had a lot of really cool sessions. I learned a lot. One of the sessions was on the new laws that came out impacting school districts. And I'm happy to share that information or the PowerPoint with anybody who's interested. So we're going to be more flexible on proficiency assessments. So those are the standardized testing that happens in the school where you have to report in on third graders who aren't passing proficiency and so on. We have a little more flexibility on what type of test we're taking, as long as it's approved by the Department of Education before it's used. Also, we talked about kindergarten. Have you guys heard about this?
Yes.
Yeah. Where normally we only get half of the adequacy for kindergarten students, assuming that, I mean, in the past, a lot of people have had half-day kindergarten, but we have full-day kindergarten. Most of the other districts do too. So through kindergarten, Keno is going to be hopefully helping us to obtain full funding for each kindergarten student. Also, I thought it was interesting that now we have to give 2 weeks notice for any questionable material that's going into the curriculum. Questionable material being on sex education, things like that, so that parents know and they can opt out. They have time to opt out before that actually happens in the classroom. I attended one session on successful annual meetings. We talked a lot about warrant articles, and I had some questions for them. I asked them who generally reviews the warrant articles before they go on to the warrant. Most school districts are using their legal counsel to review the warrant articles, and while Jane does an excellent job, and I think she appreciates the extra work, maybe I'm wrong, I think it would be good of us to have our legal counsel review all of our warrant articles before they go on to the ballot this year, and I hope that, in fact, I would love to have a motion from the board to do so. I think it's a good idea for the legal counsel to look at them with the knowledge of, and the DRA is going to look at them anyway, but the legal counsel can look first, make sure that it's something that the DRA is going to be okay with, and then it'll go forward. But I'm getting crickets, so I don't have a motion here now.
We do pass them by our legal already. So I don't know if we need, a motion can reinforce that practice, but we do currently do that.
Okay. And I do know that there has been a time or two when we had a warrant article sent to the DRA and they rejected it when it got there, so we had to come back and amend it at the deliberative session.
Rewritten would be the better word. It was not rejected, it was rewritten.
It's nothing against you, Jane. I just would feel more comfortable if we had our warrant articles reviewed by council before they go to the DRA so that we know that they're clean and
I thought you just said they did.
They do it anyway.
Okay, Nick.
I have full confidence that our administration can review warrant articles and seek the professional opinions of others if anything is questionable.
Okay, we'll talk about it a little bit more later on. All right, also I asked, what if a petition warrant article differs from a warrant article that is put on by the board? So for instance, if we put on a warrant article from the board about the funding formula, and also there's a petitioned warrant article that conflicts, what if they both pass? Then you're in a world of hurt, right? So the answer was that you have to make sure that one does not conflict with the other, or one is contingent upon the other. And the way you do that is by amending one or the other at the deliberative session. That has to happen. And I think that I may be the only one, but I think we've been under the impression in the past that we can't do anything to change a petitioned warrant article in the deliberative session, but that's false. Petitioned warrant articles can be reworded at deliberative session. And so that's what we would have to do if we happen to have two warrant articles that were conflicting with one another and we did get to deliberative.
No, but they can't change the intent of the article.
Right. But you could go so far as to, if the warrant article says to put $200,000 toward a track, and somebody amends it to say put $200,000 toward a new basketball court, you could do that. It changes it a lot, but it doesn't change it away from athletics, so it would still be okay.
I'd want to hear that from our attorney.
And I did hear this from the attorneys.
I know,
Yeah.
Drummond, but I got to see it.
All right. I also want to remind the board that the board chair can attend any of your committee meetings. If you don't have quorum at the last minute and you want to give me a call, maybe I can be there. But we do have a policy that says that if you're not meeting quorum, or if you know ahead of time that you're not going to have enough people, you can always call me and I can try to sit there as a warm body. I won't be as informed as somebody who's been there for the entire conversation, but I can try to help. I try anyway, so it's just a reminder. And that's it for me. So we're going to move on to committee reports, starting with finance and facilities.
Let's see. The big thing I wanted to let everyone know is we are meeting this October 19th on Thursday at 5:30. We're going to be touring facilities in the district. So we're starting at Mount Caesar at 5:30, and then we're going from there to Cutler. And I just heard from Dave, and they've gotten the Gilsum report, the evaluation and assessment, almost done. So we're going to continue from Cutler then to Gilsum. So that's this Thursday if anyone wants to come at 5:30. Other than that, we heard from Tom from food service, and the administration is going to move forward with using a collection company to help with outstanding accounts. It's not a collection agency, but it will help with the billing and the paperwork end of things. And that's $14 per account, so they're going to move forward with that. That's all we have.
Community relations.
So there's been a conversation we've been wanting to have, and I think we've stalled it now for 2 board meetings, around not just the warrant articles in plain English, but as CRC has met and discussed with the administration over the last year, 2 years, we've been working on a prescription for what should be communicated, when should it be communicated, who's responsible for communicating it. Everything from announcements around PSATs to, upcoming meetings, to when are yearbooks going on sale, all manner of things, so that we could, level set on whose job is it anyway to get the word out on different topics. And it's not up to the board necessarily to say the who or the how. It's more about the what needs to be communicated and how timely does it need to be. As a full board, we've been talking about this for years. How do we get the word out on different topics? So as we've worked through that conversation with the administration, there's this cookbook that's under the development that describes, at this time of year, we should be announcing this to parents. At this time of year, we should be announcing this to students. And that's all good. What's fallen out of that discussion is when we talk about things like the warrant articles in plain English, or when the board believes we want to get the word out to the community about something. Here we are talking about this tabled motion and wanting to proactively communicate with the selectmen. Great idea. Who does that? Whose job is that? Or if we believe we want to get the word out to the Sentinel and the radio stations and onto our YouTube channel about this presentation we saw tonight, whose job is that if the board wants to take that initiative? And this is where we've struggled with, do we need a media officer? Is the board self-empowered? What are the policies about this? And as a CRC team, we sort of hit an impasse. We wanted to bring this conversation to the full board to get some input on whose job is it to execute those proactive communications to the community. because it would not be the administration. It's not about a specific school, a specific event. It's more about the theme, the vibe, the finances, the whatever it is we're trying to say about the districts and the board's activities. So, we wanted to have the discussion. I'm just setting the stage. I'll pass it back to you, Lisa, to help mediate the conversation.
Goodness. Okay, so let's start with the warrant articles in plain English. Do we feel that that is the responsibility of some specific group or party? Nick?
I'm very concerned about that process because there are obviously a number of warrant articles which are controversial, to say the least, between towns. And if the board as a whole votes to word that in what we call plain English, it may not be quite plain English. That's my concern. So I think if the articles are written properly, then they should speak for themselves.
And the intent of writing the warrant articles in plain English, that piece, is to be completely impartial. And the full board does vote on the wording of what we used to call green sheet, the warrant articles in plain English. So if there's anything objectionable or if it seems slanted either way, we would be able to fix that before it goes out to the public. And it does go to the public in the Monadnock Education Matters paper that's supposed to drop a week or so before the voting. Any other questions about that or comments? Do we think that the school board should still be writing the warrant articles in plain English, or do we have ideas about someone else who should be writing them? Brian?
I don't see any problem with presenting easy to understand factual intent in an article that's written, and whether or not we can do that on our own as a group, and we choose to vote as a group on if that should happen, I'm okay with it. And, my experience has been that sometimes if you ask people what they believe the meaning of that warrant article is, you get different opinions on anyone you ask. So I support being as factual and upfront about what we're trying to achieve, and if that means that we look at someone else to give us some input in writing that, I think that's a good discussion to have.
Scott?
So, probing question. We just received our beginning of year report, and on here we're seeing a change in the trend to student population. Might be minuscule. Everybody's got an opinion on that. But if we as a board believe we wanted to contact the Sentinel and ask them to run an article on this topic right now, can we do that? Are we empowered to do that? Whose job is it? We keep talking about wanting to get the word out and not just rely on our board meeting minutes and our cable TV that doesn't reach every town. So how do we get the good word out about good things that are happening? How do we get real facts out there about controversial issues without, one board member running with their opinionated approach and talking to the Sentinel about that? Just what's the right process?
Nick?
I think a great process is to support journalism by having a journalist here who's observing and making her own judgment on what's factual.
Let's say that there was something going on in the school and we had a press release. So someone wants to write a press release about Dude Be Nice or celebrate what's right. Who would do that kind of thing? Winston?
Press releases should come out of the superintendent's office.
That's right.
Particularly if it's the district-wide. And if it's school-wide, then usually the principals would be involved in this. So I think we've got it covered. It's just that we may not do it on a timely basis.
I see a lot of head nodding by administration.
Typically, if anybody does wish to issue a press release, like a principal, or for example, the Darlene, or now Jody, for a good example, Lights On After School's coming up, and they're working on a draft of a press release for that. Those will get passed by me, and I'll approve them, and sometimes I write them. depending on the nature of the press release.
All right. So I think I heard you say that the subject matter expert or whoever is closest to the topic would write the press release and then it would go to you? Mm-hmm. Okay. We're sort of in the middle of free-form conversation here. We don't actually have a motion on the floor. But I think it's good for us at least to start the conversation. Are there other groups of tasks, Scott, you mentioned?
So I'll feed off of what Lisa just gave us for thoughts on who would do the work. And I'm going to refer back to minutes of 2 or 3 CRC meetings ago. There's a line somewhere where the board asking the administration to do that work for us gets uncomfortable. Maybe it's about the SAU itself or about something the board is doing as an activity. I'm not sure quite where that line is, and maybe you could express that to us as to where would it not be appropriate for us to ask the administration to do that kind of work.
I don't know if I could give you an example, but if you asked and I didn't feel it was appropriate, I would tell you. I don't mean to sound flip, but I mean, I can't think of a situation where that wouldn't be appropriate. But again, as much as you're a resource for us, we're a resource for you. So if there is something that we want to try to promote, and we want to do a press release, I'm happy. Contact me, and even if I don't issue it, I can help draft it, and I can get you the information that you need to do that. I don't know if that really answered your question, but.
Okay.
But we don't have anyone who's PR on staff. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Do we have an outsourced resource that we use regularly for writing? No? Okay. Phyllis?
Yeah. I know in most schools when you're a principal, somebody, a teacher, a team of teachers brings something to you and you look at it, you send a copy to the superintendent's office before anything is released to the press. And I wondered here on the board whether it's education or something we think is really good and we want to celebrate it. Anything like extra money coming in under budget or something, maybe like if it belongs to education, have education do it. If it belongs to finance, have finance. It's just a thought so that we're splitting up the work a little bit. But nothing goes out without our superintendent and maybe our chairman, so that we're splitting up the work. Everybody's looking at it with different eyes, so that it's concrete, fair, and factual.
Is there, Eric?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it's a great idea to split up the work, but nobody wants to hear old news. Everybody wants new news. They want it as it comes out, as it happens, and unfortunately that takes a long time to do, splitting it up into groups like that. And I think you have to look for another way.
Okay, Lisa?
It kind of goes along with that, Eric. It's part of the. I think it's part of the responsibility of all of our jobs as administrators to promote the good things. But the reality is, when the day starts and you start triaging a multitude of emergencies, you have to prioritize. And so, unfortunately, that's often the thing that does not get prioritized. But that being said, I think, I don't know if it needs to go back to committee, but even if it's just a gentle prodding, a reminder of to myself about, hey, this is something great, let's get a press release out about it, or whatever it might be, just to kind of keep it on my radar, and I can keep it on the other administrators' radars. You've seen the emails and you've heard about the Celebrate, we're doing the Celebrate What's Right, and why that is working so well right now is because of technology. That is set up as a Google survey. Anybody can nominate somebody. Once the survey is submitted, it goes through something called Form Publisher, and it creates the letter that I then send out to the recipient. The only human interaction really is I review the letter to make sure it's appropriate, just to make sure that it's being used as it's intended. But so that doing all of that manually would be an impossible task. But it's something when I go home at night, I can go through the letters and it's a nice way to end my day. So I guess my point is trying to perhaps leverage technology more. One of the things I'm looking at investing in, it's not really investing, it's very inexpensive, but is a social media manager interface. So that right now, when I post to all of our Facebook pages, I do them one at a time, cut and paste. But there are different platforms available that enable you to create one post and push it to as many pages as you want. And so, it's, I think, maybe looking to those types of ways to help facilitate the timeliness and the frequency of getting that good news out.
Scott?
Eric first.
No, I was just going to add, I was going to say, I think this year, I have seen a lot more out on Facebook than we've ever seen before, and I think that's helped a lot. Facebook's, I mean, for us older people is what it is now. Yeah, it sounds funny saying that, but it really is, and I think a lot of people get that message. We get a lot of feedback, on the different on Facebook. We get a lot of feedback.
Scott?
Do we think that the various committees of the board, I'll look at finance as an example, if the finance committee really wanted to get the true facts about a particular subject out maybe 8 weeks before the warrant articles are going to come out, would that group be empowered to ask for a press release, or would it have to come through the full board first, which would create a 1 to 4 week delay?
That's a good question. What I think I heard is that it would go to Lisa, and we would read it and approve it. That's what I think I heard. Does anyone disagree with that?
No, that's what I heard.
Okay.
Should be in charge.
Karen?
I was just going to say I'd prefer to see those sorts of things come to the full board at some point before they're being released, especially when we're talking about things with finance and facilities and warrant articles and whatnot, where they're very town-specific. I think there's other things where we're celebrating, say, sports, that the sports committee could certainly contact Lisa, and the full board would most likely agree with.
Okay,
things.
so if it's something regarding public policy, then it comes to the full board. If it's just an announcement or celebration, then it doesn't come to the full board.
That would be my opinion.
Okay.
It's common
Betty?
sense.
If you were going to do it that way, you need a really long runway. Like Eric was saying, some of these committees meet once a month, some of them meet every other month, and then the board meetings are only every 2 weeks. So, like I said, if it's something about facilities and you want to get it out there, but you need a really long runway to get it out, to just let it work through the process. And if it's something that's timely, it wouldn't work.
Okay. Anyone else? I have a summary. And this is the way it will work going forward unless somebody wants to make a motion otherwise. That the CRC will still put together the warrant articles in plain English. We feel like that's the CRC's responsibility. That will be approved by the full board because it's a matter of public policy. All right. If a press release wants to be suggested, it could be written by a subject matter expert or the committee closest to the topic, and it would be vetted by me and Lisa Witt. And what kind of a turnaround could we promise on that?
24 hours.
24 hours. Sound good?
It's pretty good.
Okay, so what if it's a suggested post on Facebook or the website? It's a teacher or a club that wants to put something out on Facebook, just to go out to everyone. Could we say that perhaps they could draft a suggested post for Facebook or our website and send it through the same channel through me and Lisa?
Principal.
I would say for the school Facebook pages, the principals are the admins for those pages. I have admin rights also, so I can push the district information, but I think the principals are the appropriate vetters for school-specific events and announcements and things of that nature.
And I think that covers all. Oh, Nick?
Yeah, I think we need to be really careful with it, overstepping our bounds as a board, but you have to allow administration to do their own job. If we have to run Facebook posts by the board, that is extraordinarily excessive, okay? So
Only if it's a matter of public policy. Right, if it's an announcement or something happy, then the principals will vet that, I think is what we just decided. The principals who are the administrators for the the pages can accept those from any source that they like and
You can't post on this.
put it up on that suggestion. All right?
What are we doing here?
So that's how we're going to operate unless somebody asks for something different in the form of a motion, okay? Good. And now, are we all done?
Thank
Okay.
you.
Cheshire Career Center?
Yes, we had a meeting, and we had a good meeting, one of the best I've attended so far. We had 5 people from Monadnock there, from our staff, from the principal all the way down to the board member. Jeremy was there for his first time. It was great. The junior ROTC of Fall Mountain High School presented the colors to the group on a military basis. It was well done and excellent. They have a JROTC program at Fall Mountain. They've had it for years. And they sort of come down and asked the Cheshire Career Center if they would like to join, have the students have an opportunity to join up there to the junior ROTC as part of our program with the Cheshire Career Center. That was offered, and there was a meeting scheduled with the, I think it's Lisa Danley, the director of CCC, to look into it. We also found out that we had a meeting scheduled for November 8th, which I'm asking the board to appoint me as a member of that committee to look into things of that nature. There is about 5 or 6 things they'd like to discuss and bring back the information to the board so they'll know what's going on. The advisory group has been meeting, as you know, in the fall and also in the spring. We asked the members present, there was about 25 or 30 of us there of the advisory committee, what are the problems or what are the concerns you have for Cheshire Career Center? And one of the top one was get the schedule conflict-free. We've only been working on it for 30 years, but we're getting better. I think this year was one of the best schedules we've had put together in a long time. Timing of classes between Monadnock, particularly Block 3 at the high school, seems to be a problem for students being able to attend Cheshire Career. The center continues to promote the need for the students in the right program for the right reasons, and sometimes that gets missed. Usually it's one of the previous 2 things that block it out. Increasing the challenges of the school time is becoming a problem with us, and also I understand for Cheshire Career Center, because we have students can't get the time in the proper block periods to go. This is the largest number of students attending Cheshire Career Center, all told, in the last several years. The need for common workshop and vacation days is also a problem for us and also for Foul Mountain, making them work. When they have a workshop day and we don't, our students, I don't believe, go. They stay here, they miss out on the day of instruction. We've been working on that for a long time. Our next meeting is March 20th. And I missed something here. Oh, we've been 8 years without a signed agreement with Cheshire Career Center. We were given a copy of the last signed contract we had. That's the committee that I want to be assigned to be on, if that's what they ever go through with it, and to represent the board to make sure we get that signed, because the superintendent's on it anyways, and the business office is already there. But I just want to make sure we have. And the one thing I forgot was Ken Burns. Is that familiar to you? Mm-hmm. He's contacted the Cheshire Career Center to try to help us out with some programs, so that not us, Monadnock, but with the CCC. That's a great step forward.
Incredible.
So other than that, it's one of the longest meetings I have been to in there, and I forgot the most important thing.
The food was good?
The food.
How did I know?
I think Roger Scott Rogers, the culinary director, put on a fabulous buffet breakfast as usual.
Nick?
So there's some scheduling conflicts with Block.
I'd speak to the scheduling. I can't speak to the Block 3 specifically, but in terms of the calendar, we set our district calendar on the proposed calendar that I had received from SAU 29 and received notification not too long before the start of the school year that their calendar changed, and made the decision not to bring forward changes to our school calendar as a result of that, simply because I felt it would be an inconvenience to families because it would have changed PD days and at least one, maybe two. So that's why this year we have a little bit out of sync with the overall calendar. We are also a little bit out of sync because we schedule by hours, and so we are scheduling 176 student days, and we don't make up 5 snow days. Now, usually our snow days correlate with Keens, so that piece isn't the issue, but we don't make them up. And so if they add days to the end of the year, their year, and we don't, students end up missing out on that end as well.
What sort of impact has that had on the students this year with this misalignment of the schedules?
This year, I don't think we've encountered a day. I think it was the January day that changed, and I believe it might have been the October workshop day that was changed. So, but I'd have to go back and look at my notes to see where the differences were. But again, it was because we received a revised calendar too late to really make feasible changes.
Is this a significant problem with this, you said Block 3?
It's down to, what do we have, 3 or 4 problems last year we really couldn't solve.
Right.
They couldn't take the course because they had to have the subject here first before they graduated, and something of that nature.
Right.
And I don't know which course it was in, because they offer, I think, 21 courses now that they're offering to, and they're excellent. And I didn't, just for your awareness, Keene High School Board is discussing the starting high school at a later time. You've seen that latest buzzword go around.
I heard about that.
They are looking at it. And the other conflict we had was calendar days versus the hour days to make everything click together. So that could be a real problem for us if the starting change came. That's what
I would argue the other way,
counselors were
Lisa.
saying. That's a whole different ballgame. But that's on their agenda.
Winston, I'm concerned about the fact that we haven't had a good contract for 8 years. Is there any way that we can get that resolved at the next
That's going to be
meeting?
resolved now. Lisa Danley has put it, and I think somebody called the state of New Hampshire is a little upset they don't have a contract time. And,
What are the steps that we need to take to get that resolved? We've been hearing it for a long time. I think we all want to get it resolved.
I have a copy of the last contract, and I think you people have one. It needs to go over line by line.
And we did have a meeting last year where we met. It was myself, the superintendent from Fall Mountain, and from Keene. We met with the person at the Department of Education whose name escapes me, who is sort of in charge of ensuring that all of those articulated agreements are current. And at the time, Paul Leather, who's the deputy commissioner, also sat in on that meeting. And we went line by line. And we identified some things that needed to be changed, adjusted. I have to go back to my notes. It was at least a year ago that meeting happened. And we were waiting to hear back from the Department of Education about a revised agreement based on some of the things that we had talked about. And to my knowledge, we had not heard back from them. So that was where my understanding was that it was left. We were waiting to hear back from the Department of Education so that we could move forward.
Can we see if we can get an update on that?
Mm-hmm. I think there's a meeting coming up amongst as Wynn just mentioned.
I don't know if the November 8th meeting is going to cover that or not, but I think it's on the one of the agendas. And this is very important to us.
Do you want this on the next school board agenda? Or do you think it's going to be too soon?
I think we should start it. I may not have to be ready for the information, but I think we should get it on the agenda so we don't forget it. It doesn't get just faded off into the sunset. And right now, I looked at it, and there's only a couple of minor things. Maybe it's just wording. it sort of guarantees our rights as a member of the compact, that we get a full working load and students are properly served.
I just want to make sure that we're doing our part and we're not the ones
We're
slowing
doing our
things down.
part. We've been there, right there. And so has Fall Mountain.
No,
All right,
Nick's like rooting for the Cubs.
extracurricular committee,
No meeting.
education committee.
Yes.
And we went back.
We did meet, and I have a couple things. Andy Harrison came representing the Social Studies Department, and they have been working on their K-12 curriculum, which is really nice, instead of just 7-12. And they've made a shift in emphasis at the elementary. It used to be certain topics that they would cover for social studies, and now they're having them skills-based, so it's like social skills and things like that. And I think it's probably a good change. And then the other thing, in your packet were the test scores, and Jeremy is prepared to answer your questions. Thanks, Jeremy.
So I gave you in the packet the SBAC results, and I gave you 3 years of them for grades 3 through 8. We only have 3 years. And the state is moving away from SBAC this year to the New Hampshire statewide assessment program, but they should be scored the same. Yeah, I know. I know. I knew it when I said it. They should be scored the same. So we should be able to see some longitudinal data. That's the hope. It's actually just a different bank of questions. They moved off of the Smarter Balanced SBAC, Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium question bank to a question bank that's being used by other states. And the idea is that they can connect it better to the New Hampshire way, New Hampshire standards. The test is going to look a little different. So there won't be a performance task on it anymore. It'll be mostly multiple choice and fill in the blank. But the 3 years I gave you, I gave it to you in a couple different ways. I wanted you to have different ways to look at it. So I gave you a 3-year comparison based on grade. Monadnock's always blue. The state's always the reddish brown color. I gave you that for math and ELA. And then the cohort, I just want to explain. A true cohort, I would have taken out the kids that came in or left during those 3 years. And it's not a true cohort. It's just a grouping. You know, so most of the kids are the same kids, but if a kid moved in 3rd or 4th grade. And what it does is it follows them over their 3 years. So cohort 1, when they first took the test in 14-15, they were in 3rd grade, then they took it again in 4th grade, then they took it in 5th grade. Cohort 2, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, and so on. So you have those 4 cohorts who have taken it 3 years in a row. I also kind of included just a summary of what I explained at Education Committee so that you had it written and you can kind of go through it. And I'm happy to answer any questions about SBAC first, and then I'll talk about AP afterwards if people have questions. Nick?
There definitely seem, without pointing them out, there definitely seem to be certain grades which have a significant difference in disparity between state average and performance here.
Absolutely.
And if I'm interpreting the graphs, it isn't necessarily the same cohort.
Nope.
It's the grade itself.
Yes.
And I know there's been a lot of discussion about the transition between elementary and middle school and how we tackle that. Could you provide a very brief update and progress that's been made in that direction? I know Linda Calliger, was it Linda Calliger what's the name of the team that you guys put together?
Yeah,
right?
it was a team called the Cedars. So
yes,
yeah, we do see some real. You know, it's hard to call them trends with 3 years. You know, it's a 3-year data point. So but I did the best to call them trends. But I mean, you do see things like 6th grade is usually just above the state average. 5th grade is usually just below the state average. And then we see that big drop in 7th and 8th grade. And I reported out on that last year. So we've made some real big changes. They had tried the Cedar team, and it was a valiant effort. They tried to create this RTI team so that they really could give the kids what they needed. But it wasn't working. We were seeing more behavior problems. We haven't seen improvement in our grades. The SBAC is one measure, but we had other measures that we weren't seeing the improvement on. So Ryan and Lisa worked really diligently this year with the teachers to really rethink what middle school is and what we want it to be. And this goes along with the other grades, but district-wide, especially in the middle school, we're really saying, okay, we've done all kinds of academic interventions and it's not moving the needle for us. What else do we need to look at? We need to look at our culture. It goes along with what Zach was talking about, dude be nice. We need to look at our behavior. If kids aren't available to learn, no matter how much academic intervention we give them, we're not going to move that needle. So we're really focused on that whole child approach in the middle school. We moved the academic classes to the beginning of the day because middle schoolers do better at the early start. They do better earlier in the day than in the afternoon. We moved their VEXs to the afternoon. We built in, instead of having the traditional intervention block, we're calling it a WIN block K to 12. What do I need? And that might be extra support in something that was taught to me this morning, and it might be going back and working on some 4th or 5th or 6th grade skills that I just don't have that are getting in the way of my 8th grade work. We built in an activity block. Middle school, all the studies tell us middle schoolers need time to stretch. They need time to be outside, and they need a little bit of social time. It's recess in a lot of ways, and it's really made a huge difference in the school for the feeling of the kids. They need a break after lunch, so we built that into their schedule. It's early, it's October, but if you go down into that hallway, you can feel the difference down there. You can feel the difference in the classrooms. We have less behavior reports. We have less kids wandering halls. We have a lot more learning happening. So we're feeling like our early results are really positive. And we're really doing that K to 12, but that was a big focus in the middle school to address some of these concerns. I'm not sure if I answered what you're asking. I kind of went off, but.
Sure, it gives me a little idea of what you guys are doing to address that.
Yep.
It's important to me that I hear as a board member that things are happening, you're trying different things in order to make a difference there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think at the meeting, I liked the statement you made that they've tried to make a shift, particularly at the middle school, from treating them like little adults to big kids.
Yeah, and that was a big thing. In a 7 through 12, it's very hard not to treat a 7th grader like a senior because that's what the school climate is. But we've really rethought that and said, they were in 6th grade, they were in elementary school last year. The kids from Emerson or Troy or Gilsum, Emerson and Troy especially, were pre-K through 6. They were in the same school for up to 9 years. And then had a huge jump to 7th grade. So the middle school has really looked at that and trying to understand that. We built in a much better transition day. The middle school has a team right now that wants to work with the 6th grade teachers. We're going to do some shadowing so that they can get back and forth so that the teachers know each other better. So if they're having trouble in 7th grade, they have a 6th grade teacher to reach out to. We're just trying to hit all of those things that we missed to see if that moves us in the right direction.
Any other questions for Jeremy on this? So did you want to go over the AP summary too?
Yeah, I can talk about the AP a little bit. So you have the AP scores, and what I gave you is just kind of 3 different ways. I gave you a summary of how many kids took the scores, took the test, and how they scored. You have a group about a study about comparable groups, so it compares them to New Hampshire and to the United States. And then you also have the 5-year history. And I didn't give a big explanation on the AP scores because they're pretty self-explanatory. Overall, one of the big things that really stands out is the number of exams that were taken last year. There was 156 exams taken by I think 91 students. 94 students took 156 exams. If you compare that to 5 years ago, we had 65 kids taking 97 exams. So we've had a big jump. In Ed Committee, it was kind of pointed out, some of the questions that were asked were, are we watering down AP, or are we, by giving more tests, does that automatically kind of mathematically guarantee we're going to have more 1s and 2s, which are the low end, rather than 4s or 5, which are the high end? 3 is considered a passing AP exam score. And I think it's a valid question. Lisa Spencer invited me to meet with all the AP teachers yesterday, and they had a really great conversation about the purpose of AP. And it's an ongoing conversation. We're not done with it. We want to meet some more. But they were basically talking about that it's the course that matters more than the test. That the idea of giving an AP course allows students to not have a college prep course, but to have a course that's going to get them used to college level work. And that, you know, they encourage anyone who wants to take the course to take the course. The College Board encourages it. So the school does have if you want to try AP and you're willing to do the work for it, then you can take an AP course. And the big question is, should they force the test? Should every kid who takes the course take the test? And right now, that's the expectation. I found out, thank you, Jane, because I looked into it deeper, 4 kids didn't take the test. 2 planned to not take it, and 2 just made sure they weren't there that day and didn't take it. So that's the big question. The AP teacher's general feeling, if I can summarize for them, and if they see these notes and want to question me afterwards, but if I can summarize for them, is they want the kids to take the test, and they're not worried about the scores on the test, because the reason you give AP is not necessarily for that test. For kids who can use it to get college credit, that's great, but colleges are changing how much they accept that at this point anyways. It's the experience of the higher level course and the rigorous work that goes along with it that they find value in. One of the biggest points was we want the kids to take the test because there's kids that they thought, you know, if they take this test, they might get a 1 or a 2, and then they surprise them and get a 3, and that's something that's really great for the kid and for the teacher. So they want everyone to have that opportunity.
Nick?
Well, I've always been a fan of the initiatives that are taken between local community colleges and their high schools to have some of the advanced coursework taught either on premise or at the community college itself. Either way, I think it's a much more rich experience. From my experience and from friends when I was in high school and community college, and but for the kids that do take AP, I think many of them, from my experience, speaking from my experience, many of them do expect to have that part of the incentive is that you can skip a couple classes when you get to your freshman year, or get a little bit ahead, save a little bit of money. So it is a little bit concerning to me when I see the performance on the AP exams that we have here, less than half getting passing grades when it's closer to 3/4 at the state average. So it's definitely something I want to continue to watch.
Yeah, and that was part of the discussion, absolutely. The thing is about the AP, one of the things that they really wanted me to bring up is that it really is changing. That, you know, there's a study out there right now that 89% of the top colleges will take AP for credit, but not to necessarily miss a course, and you have to get a 5. It's not, the program itself has changed over the years. So it's an ongoing conversation. The AP teachers aren't done with the conversation. They really want to all be on the same page, and I will definitely bring that feedback to them and to Lisa Spencer and move forward with it.
And the 5 is the best score?
5 is the best score.
Phyllis, did you have your hand up?
No, I did not.
Okay. Jeremy, I'm wondering if you can tell us how many students, maybe for next meeting, how many students got college credit last year? Not just through AP classes, but by taking the classes that are presented here by, is it Kent State, New England College?
Running Start, yeah.
Running Start.
Running Start?
Yeah.
I would just be curious in that number.
Sure.
If you could tell us.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of that program because it's not something that it's an actual college course.
Right.
And, you know, it is college credit. It isn't something that you try to find an equivalent to with an AP exam.
Right.
Please.
Just an observation, you may not be able to get that exact data because not every college accepts. I mean, 3 is considered passing, but your top 25 schools aren't accepting 3s. And even when you've got a 4 or 5, you're taking a subject test too. And Running Start won't even enter the equation. So it's good as a measure. Yep, you've got a college course, but it's a matter of how many are accepting it. And as Jeremy said, a lot of them aren't accepting it anymore.
What I'm most interested in is 4 years ago, we didn't have any students who were getting college credit through Running Start because it didn't exist, right?
Yep.
And has it been growing over the years? So if we could present that in some way?
Yep. I'll track down that information as best I can.
Anything else for Jeremy? No?
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Policy Committee.
So, Policy Committee last meeting, one of the key topics is we're looking into developing one or more policies around playground safety, equipment standards, all those sorts of things. Rules of the road, each building having their own set. And the conversation is going to continue next Tuesday. We've invited the building administrators to come in and chat with us about, what would a board level policy look like as opposed to local building rules and how each of their playgrounds are different. So it's just an open discussion. You're invited to attend. And the other thing we're starting to take apart is the results. You might remember we had asked the New Hampshire School Board Association to perform an audit of our policies. So we have those results back. We now have a robust working backlog of things we need to look at, either because things are out of date, things are missing from our policy library that they recommend. So we're going to kind of talk strategy next Tuesday about how to work on that backlog, because it's too much just taking a 1 hour once a month type of cadence. We're going to need to do something else if we want to come up to speed. So come on out next Tuesday at 5.
Thank you. Did I miss any other committees that wanted to give a report? We'll take an action on the manifest.
Okay, I'd like to move the manifest in the amount of, and Jane, there were 2 different figures in there. So I'm going with the 1 million. It was at the front of the book.
$1,184,860.51.
Second.
That's the same.
All right. And is there any discussion on the manifest? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? And moving on to the minutes of October 3rd. Public minutes first.
I would make a motion to accept the public minutes October 3rd.
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, everybody was there.
Everybody was there.
100% attendance.
Very cool. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, and I don't think we have any non-public, oh, yep, we do, sorry. Non-public of 8:34?
It was written.
8:34.
And I'm looking at 8:34C right now.
I will make that motion to approve them as written.
You'll be the second, Phyllis, because I think Scott already moved them, but thank you. And any discussion here? All in favor?
Can I just be clear on what we're voting on? I don't have any notation for 8:34, so what am I looking at here?
So you're looking at the
I
non-public
see the
minutes.
starting time of that meeting, thank you.
Right, yeah, and then
I'm with you.
parentheses, the C.
Yeah, both of them say 8:34.
Yes, they do.
Okay, so that doesn't help me, let me look at these.
One of them says C, though.
Thank you.
Lisa,
I am with you.
I'm sorry, the one with Darlene Ayotte is supposed to say 8:04?
The one with Darlene Ayotte should
The
say
resi-
8:04.
The resignation,
That's
that
the one
should
marked
be.
834C.
Yep, so we'll change that to 8:04
Okay,
under RSA 91A3C.
okay.
Any other discussion on these? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Good. Moving on to the ones that read 834B. Got 'em?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Good. That wasn't an abstention, right, Brian? Okay. And lastly, the hearing.
Motion to accept it as written on October 3rd.
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, for next meeting's agenda, I have discussion on the apportionment formula. From Jane, we'll have this year's apportionment and equalized valuation. Hopefully the tax rates as well. Keeping Cheshire Career Center contract on there. And also number of students who got college credit. Anything else that we need to have on next meeting?
Can I add to your homework from earlier when we were talking about the warrant article?
Only if the person who motioned to table will accept it. I'll do it anyway.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear, when I said if we could have the contract, I was hoping for the entire contract, not just the piece that's regarding.
Yeah, because I'm not going to read the whole contract and pick out the piece that you want anyway, so.
Okay. And I would also like to know what it would, if you could ask the council what it would take to amend the contract, if that's necessary.
Okay. Got it.
Thank you.
Anything else for next meeting?
Yes, Lisa, the project in the Manchester district, there was in the news here, the WMUR for the William Varney project.
Okay.
Some more information about that model.
All I caught was project in Manchester.
It's and I was hoping Lisa might be able to help with this specific wording. It's a model the district is testing in, I believe, 5 schools. The gist, I got almost individualized education programs of some sort.
I know what you're talking about. It's
Yes.
something that Frank Adelboo likes a lot. A lot.
Whoops, that was out loud voices.
So Manchester project. Got it. All right. Anything else for next meeting?
The next meeting is at Cutler.
At Cutler? I haven't looked that far ahead, but yeah.
No, but it's nice to know tonight because otherwise we'll see 3 or 4
So don't come
people
here.
So, actually, if our next meeting is at Cutler, can we ask that audio with individual microphones be prepared?
Yes. Betty?
Terrible.
What will be the date of that meeting?
7th, I think.
7th,
First Tuesday of the month, right?
We shouldn't even do this.
7th of
Kids have something to
November.
do.
November 7th, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
I think it is.
Yes, we're actually
Okay, I
going
got
3
it.
weeks
Okay.
in
There's
between.
nobody in the audience for
This is a
that.
5-week month.
No, gonna be
It's a
the same
5-week
one.
October.
All right, so we've got 3 weeks to do our homework. Good stuff.
You can sort of see
All
the
right,
arguments
I
for the
think we're
out of
moving
town.
on to second public comments. Do we have anyone? Yes, sir.
The voice in the past.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jim Rumanier. I'm a selectman in the town of Roxbury. I'm here to discuss briefly the matter of the funding formula that was raised earlier. There was reference made to the virtue of working together. I think the term was better together. And that certainly makes sense when it comes to the work of a regional school board in dealing with educational policy, whether establishing it or overseeing it. But whatever that means, whatever that term means when it comes to funding, is quite something else. That's evident in the sheet of paper. I just got a glimpse of it earlier in the evening, but it's got some numbers on it showing the impact of a proposed change in the funding formula, how it impacts different towns in different ways. In fact, is in a regional school district, not all towns are alike. You know that. There are large differences in geography, in population, in numbers of students who leave towns to go to a particular school. I mean, Some towns have got hundreds and hundreds of students. Roxbury sends about 20. Those are large differences. There are lesser differences that Nicholas raised earlier. For example, differences in median household income. Not all that different among different towns. But whatever the differences, it makes no sense that taxpayers in one town should pay substantially more than taxpayers in another town to educate their students in the same school system. Some variation is understandable and accepted. Roxbury pays substantially more than any other community in that regard. But a reversion to the former formula would stretch us and return us to a period of really unreasonable differences. And therefore, I applaud the mention made tonight to do some research by this board, calling in experts to look at the impact on individual communities and on the school system generally if it comes to changing a formula that's now in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Eric?
If I could, I just want to share some good news. Was lucky enough to go over to Dover and watch the Dover band show this week, and I just want to say how great the Monadnock band was. There were 12 other bands there, and we were as good as any of them. There's a lot of schools there, a heck of a lot bigger than us that were there, and they were awesome. A couple other things. Field hockey playoffs, 10-19 at 3 o'clock at Keene State College. Monadnock versus Newport this Friday night in football. Both are undefeated, so it'll be a big night. Senior night for football, cheerleading, and cross country. So, give everybody something to do this week.
Anything else from the public? We're going to move into non-public sessions. We do need to have a quick non-public under C for reputation. So we'll ask the public to be excused. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Hi. The Celtics fan.
I am.
It was bad. We had a bad